This week on Africa Update, community of East African states begin new round of peace talks as scores of people flee conflict-ravaged areas in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Will the peace talks bring lasting stability to the region? Plus, Roundup Africa, a highlight of some of the major stories on the continent. This is Africa Update, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for joining. In Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, scores of people flee conflict areas towards the city of Goma for fear of an imminent advancement of the M23 rebels. The arrival of the displaced in Goma coincides with the commencement of a round of peace talks led by the community of East African states. The M23 rebels, whom Congo accuses of receiving support from neighboring Rwanda, have more than doubled the territory they hold in recent weeks as they have grabbed control of several key towns. Rwanda denies any involvement. The M23 rebels signed a peace agreement with the government but re-emerged last year, saying that the terms had not been met. Meanwhile, the second contingent of Kenyan troops deployed under the banner of a regional bloc arrived in the war-ravaged Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Wednesday, November 16. The soldiers flew into Goma from Nairobi and are part of over 900 Kenyan troops that will be sent to the Democratic Republic of Congo. They will be joined by troops from other member states of the East African community to help the Congolese government battle rebels who now control key localities, forcing thousands of Congolese to flee their homes.
20-year-old Rebecca Nyirarukundo fled clashes in June between the Congolese army and the rebels around Ruchuru territory with a husband and one-year-old son. They found shelter at this school-town camp for the displaced in Nyiragongo territory, along with hundreds of others.
We arrived here on foot because we had no transportation, but had no food. I went 5 days without cooking, and my child became weak. I took him to the health center, but nothing worked.
Her son was malnourished, got sick, and on July 17, he died. In the town of Kanyaruchinya, those newly displaced keep arriving, stretching the few resources available.
Since we have been here, we have had no assistance. I have already buried 4 people because of the lack of water, food, and shelter. We are suffering a lot.
The UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, says clashes since March between the Congolese National Army and the rebel March 23 movements have forced more than 160,000 people to flee their homes. The UNHCR says it has received less than 1/5 of a $225 million budget request for the DRC that was based on needs before the fighting broke out. Medical aid is also stretched in Kanyaruchinya as the town has only one mobile hospital.
The hospital was installed in 2021 under the leadership of the president, but there has been no improvement in terms of equipment and logistics. The government has been giving almost nothing lately, and the crisis has caused problems with health care.
Meanwhile, protests this week against the UN peacekeeping mission in eastern Congo turned violent and left at least 15 people dead. The demonstrators accused the peacekeeping force of failing to stabilize the region and keep them safe. Whether or not one blames the peacekeepers for the situation, it is clear that safety in the towns near Goma is a scarce commodity.
Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2013 signed a peace deal with the M23 rebels under the auspices of the chairperson of the International Conference for the Great Lakes region, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, the mediator. Both sides also agreed on the following. Former rebels are entitled to amnesty for rebelling but are not granted immunity to alleged perpetrators of war crimes. The release of prisoners was also part of the agreement. The end of M23 as a rebel movement and the possibility to establish itself as a political party. the return of extorted and looted properties during the M23's brief occupation of Goma in November 2012. The declarations also include provisions for the return of refugees and internally displaced persons to their homes. So why has the M23 resurfaced this time? We have in the studio Musa Salmanu, a former UN expert on mission, who joins me to give perspectives on this. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, viewers.
All right. Now, by way of giving us a context to this conflict dates back to the colonial era. Why has it resurfaced? Why has it refused to go away, despite several peace talks that we have seen?
So yes, you're right. This conflict predates even the colonial era, but then also it was exacerbated by the colonial policy of the Belgians in Congo and the superpower kind of politics post-independence. Thereafter, then the military regime, which ensured that one part of Congo enjoyed everything to the exclusion of the other. And then came the rebellion, which culminated in the overthrow of the Mobutu regime, and so on. So you have, for the conflict in Congo, it depends on how far back you want to go. You could go as far back as possible, but you could start with the latest. So let's start with 2013 or 2012, when M23 almost overran the whole security infrastructure and the entire town of Goma. Goma is the capital city of the North Kivu province, and kind of for a few days was totally in charge of Goma before they were pushed back using the Congolese army and the United Nations and so on. So with that came some kind of agreements that were signed, like you've reeled out. So part of those agreements was the fact that of reintegration. M23 rebels were going to be reintegrated into the Congolese army, and some of them who did not wish to continue fighting were going to be reintegrated into the communities and so on and so forth. They were going to be given amnesty, except for those that were known to have committed war crimes and so on, and crimes against humanity, and so many other packages that were supposed to be given, exchange, ensuring that people, IDPs returned, and so on, and continuation of normalcy, or return of normalcy to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. That did not happen. The reintegration did not take place. They felt, so therefore, after some time, the M23 came back, started fighting from where they are now in Rushuru. Rushuru is in the part close to the border with Uganda, and they are fighting towards Goma. Goma is in contention now, and it's a place that is it's a provisional capital. It's a place that has strategic importance, and is the link between Congo itself, that's a province having the border with Rwanda.
All right. So, but I mean, how much of political will have we seen? I mean, given the fact that we've not seen commitment to implement all the agreements, how are you optimistic about this peace talks this time around, whether or not it will result in a positive, or I would say lasting stability in that region?
So the problem with negotiations and peace deals is that sometimes, because of fatigue of fighting, there are so many concessions that are made that are impracticable. They cannot be met. Or sometimes you meet people shifting bases after such agreements have been made. So it now depends on if the agreements were reached in utmost good faith, and if they are practicable. For example, I give you an example. During my stay in the DRC 2010 to 2012, I met officers of the Congolese army who were former rebels, and you could know that they still see themselves as rebels, even though they were wearing the National Army uniform. And so it was easy for them to behave in a way that did not protect civilians. So I am sure there are those realities. It's a different thing to agree to or concede to something. It's another ball game entirely when the implementation starts. Now, Congo is a kind of an unfortunate situation because apart from the internal dynamics in Congo, Congo has neighbors that are busybodies in its own territory. You have Ugandans having a stake or wanting to have a stake in Congo, and you have also their other neighbor, Rwanda, also. Now, the issue with Rwanda is also peculiar in the sense that if you look at the genocides in Rwanda, where the Hutus and the Tutsis, now the Hutus, after the genocide, some of them migrated were chased out, and they sought refuge in the Eastern Republic of Congo, Goma, Axis, and so on and so forth. And they formed what they call the FDLR. Now, the FDLR, where Rwanda is now accusing the Democratic Republic of Congo of providing sanctuary for the FDLR from where it attacks Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is saying that it has a right to come into Congo to fight those rebels. Now, there have been up and down issues on that, and there has been, now on the upper side or the northern part of Congo, there's also the border with Uganda, where you have another rebel group, which is the ADF, which has affiliation with Islamic states, and they are also fighting from that. Whereas Uganda and DRC are collaborating through joint exercises to fight ADF. In terms of FDLR and the M23, now DRC is accusing Rwanda of supporting M23.
All right. But with all this dimension, it looks like it's beyond an internal crisis. This is looking more like a regional crisis, especially if you look at the involvement of, Rwanda, Uganda, and the accusations that we have heard from the DRC about, Rwanda funding, or I would say sponsoring the M23.
The crisis in Congo has always been that is fueled by external forces. Now there are the internal dimensions of the internal problems, but it has been exacerbated by external forces. Like I told you earlier on, there was a superpower rivalry that ended up with Congo as the proxy. There is also the issue of, like you said, the enormous resources in Congo is also a curse to the Congo. Everybody wants to have a piece of the cake. And because of the size of the Congo, for example, if you're flying from Kinshasa to Goma, you're going almost, I think, 2 time zones. Sometimes to access some parts of Congo, you have to go to Uganda and go back to Bunia, for example. So all this has shown that the Congo crisis is the entire Great Lakes region. And now with the DRC joining the East African community, you find out that Kenya is now, like the hegemon of that region, is now sending its own troops to participate in a kind of peacekeeping there, that in collaboration with, or fighting, joining the DRC government to fight the rebels. So it's a regional problem, but I think it's exacerbated because the parties or the countries within the region have their own individual interests. And most time those interests are resource-based. Congo is so rich, the Eastern Congo is wonderfully rich, and everybody wants to have part of that.
Now, talking about intervention and peace talks, we have seen that there's going to be peace talks beginning from 21st of November, but we also have the lead in that peace talk sending troops. So Kenya, you mentioned, is sending troops into the DRC. How would this work when we're talking peace talks and we're still sending troops?
So Kenya is sending troops not per se a bilateral, it's a multilateral organization. Kenya is sending under the auspices of the East African Brigade. Now, the African Peace and Security Architecture provides for regional brigades. Like in ECOWAS, we have the ECOWAS Standby Force. The East Africa also has the East Africa Standby Force. And they are expected to intervene when there are crises like this in the regions. That is the auspices under which Kenya is sending its troops. And there is the memorandum of understanding between Kenya and DRC that they should send those troops as ESF. And it has agreed with other countries to also send. The only country that the DRC did not agree to send troops is Rwanda, because DRC believes that Rwanda is an active participant and supporting the M23 in this fight.
Mm. All right, so what will it take, I mean, to bring stability in that region, to de-escalate the tension so that we do not see a situation of maybe Russia, Ukraine on the African continent? This is some way about territorial control, from what I understand.
Well, territorial control in a way, but also the fact that there is no doubt, there is clear demarcation between the territory that belongs to the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, the countries it's surrounding, Congo is so vast that there are a lot of ungoverned spaces in Congo. So these rebels create a territory or carve out territories for them from where they operate. Rwanda, Uganda are all saying that we should be able to come in to fight rebels that are fighting us. So that is where the problem. So it has to be agreed that countries or the regional, just like they're doing, should support Congo to impose stability within its territory. If it does that, that means there will be no sanctuary for rebels to fight from Congo territory. Secondly, there must be utmost good faith in negotiations between the Congolese government and the M23. Every one of them should know that it's a give and take, and none can get all that they want. Okay. Then lastly, I think they have to put the people ahead of everything. That the Congolese deserve peace, the Congolese deserve to conduct their businesses and prosperity and to prosper.
All right, well, thank you so much for your perspectives on this, Musa Salmanu, the former UN expert on mission, and for joining us on Africa Update. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. You're watching Africa Update, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Thanks for staying. Now, Mozambique has officially started exporting liquefied natural gas produced in the country's north, which is plagued by terrorists. President Filipe Nyusi made the announcement on Sunday, November 13. It is the first shipment of gas under a long-term purchase and sale contract with British giant BP. The offshore plant, located in the Cabo Delgado province, is managed by the Italian energy company Eni. Mozambique has set high hopes on vast natural gas deposits, the largest ever found in sub-Saharan Africa, that was discovered in the northern Cabo Delgado province in 2010.
The president of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi, announced over the weekend that his country was entering a new era as the first shipment of gas produced at an offshore plant managed by the Italian company Eni was departing its territorial waters.
Com elevada honra que anuncio o início da primeira exportação.
It is with great honor that I announce the start of the first export of liquefied natural gas. Produced in Rovuma in Mozambique by the Coral Sung Fung project. The British sponsorship departs Mozambican waters for the international market.
Mozambique is optimistic about its vast natural resource gas deposits, the largest ever found south of the Sahara. Analysts say that Mozambique could become one of the world's 10 biggest exporters of natural gas.
Today, Mozambique enters the annals of world history as one of the exporting countries of LNG, which, in addition to representing an alternative source of supply, largely contributes to energy security in countries with the highest consumption.
The region has been hard hit by an insurgency waged by Islamic State-linked militants that have cast doubt over the viability of exploration sites and stalled progress. The conflict has killed more than 4,100 people over the past 10 years. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, a non-governmental organization, hundreds of thousands or more have been displaced, according to the United Nations.
All right, thank you for staying on. Let's take a look at Roundup Africa. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that France was ending its Bahrain anti-terrorism mission in Africa after over a decade, saying that a new strategy will be worked out with African partners. The declaration came in a wide-ranging speech reviewing France's strategy, where the president also underlined the importance of its nuclear deterrent as well as relations with Germany and the United Kingdom despite recent tensions. Macron laid out his strategic defense priorities for France in Europe and Africa in the coming years, not least in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and a growing international assertiveness of China. The British government announced the early withdrawal of its military contingent currently deployed in Mali as part of the UN mission to the country. Behind the decision is the ruling junta's use of the Russian paramilitary group Wagner. According to the Ministry of Defense, the commitment was supposed to last 3 years, but faced with the rising instability in the country, London decided to anticipate the withdrawal of its troops, who should leave the country in the next 6 months. Almost 300 British soldiers have been in Mali since the end of 2020 as part of the deployment of the UN peacekeeping mission in the country launched in 2013, MINUSMA ED, aimed at stabilizing the security situation in a country plagued by terrorists. In a similar vein, Côte d'Ivoire has also announced the gradual withdrawal of its troops from the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali by August 2023, a decision that comes against a backdrop of diplomatic tensions between Abidjan and Bamako for several months. The rotation of the protection company based in Mopti, as well as the deployment of staff officers and police officers planned for October and November 2022, respectively, can no longer be carried out, said a letter from the permanent mission of Côte d'Ivoire to the UN. The Ivorian army did not confirm whether these rotations had indeed already been interrupted. The UN Security Council voted to extend for another year the UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic. The vote was 12 in favor with 3 abstentions, namely those of Russia, China, and Gabon. The French drafted resolution maintains the robust mandate of the 17,500 peacekeeping mission, focusing on protecting civilians whilst encouraging President Faustin Archange Touadéra and his government to promote lasting peace and stability through a reinvigorated political and peace process. The World Health Organization announced that 3 trial vaccines for Ebola will arrive in Uganda in the coming weeks. The announcement was made during the G20 meeting in Indonesia. WHO Committee of External Experts has evaluated 3 candidate vaccines and agreed that all 3 should be included in the planned trial in Uganda. WHO and Uganda's Minister of Health has considered and accepted the committee's recommendation. The Ebola outbreak in Uganda was declared in late September. Since then, Ebola claimed at least 55 deaths. 2 of the 3 trial vaccines were developed in the UK. The 3rd trial vaccine comes from the US. Now, Egyptian and Arab stars hit the red carpet at the opening of the 44th Cairo International Film Festival, which kicked off on Sunday, the 13th of November night at Egypt's famous Opera House. Dozens of Egyptian and Arab celebrities attended the annual event, one of the most renowned in the Arab world. The festival celebrates what legendary Hungarian filmmaker Bella Tar described during the opening as universal language of cinema. Tar received the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award this year. The event will include 97 films from more than 52 countries. The president of this year's international jury is Japanese director Naomi Kawase. The 44th edition will run for 10 days until November 22nd. And that's a wrap on Africa Update for this week. You can watch more via all our social media platforms, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.